Hey, I'm Cyclone, and today I wanted to share with you what I've been up for the first 4 days of the league, how I made my headhunter, and the success and the fail of it. Now, what we did, we were 5 people in a team. Now, very quickly for team play. Team play is similar to group play. Group play is kind of a team play. So basically, group play is you're in the same instance. You have a carry, an aura bot, maybe a color, maybe a mana guardian, or however that group play is phrased. You are in the same instance and you work together. Now, team play is a bit different. In team play, everybody does their own stuff, but you work together towards a common goal. Eventually, a big currency pool and then a split. Now, in our cases, our case, we run memories. We run essence memory. We had 4 runner and 1 trader, and we just run more and more memories, supplied more and more essences, or at least that was the plan. Now, there are a few things that went wrong with this. First of all, we had too many runners, we supplied way too many essences, there was not enough consumption for it, which caused the overall profit not to be as much as we expected. Overall, at the end, I still made 185 divines, which is nothing to scoff at. It could have just been better. So what I originally wanted to do was talk about what I thought went wrong, what I thought went right, and how to improve upon this for future leagues, and kind of what people can learn from this. But it just didn't feel really right. So I had a big discussion with Batsy, a good buddy of mine, who is a PoE trader, really good player, makes her own builds, is also a YouTube content creator, so for Minecraft, and overall just a really great buddy, play together in PoE, outside of PoE, just, yeah, good buddy. And she offered to share her insight about this instead of me, and kind of gives her a perspective as a trader about my situation, and again, what others could learn from that. So with that being said, let's give the microphone to Batsy and see what she can say about this.
Alright exiles, this is gonna be a boring market analysis, so buckle up. First of all, I want to point out a couple of disclaimers. This is related to Cyclone's situation as a team strategy that was focused on essences. This can apply to solo players, but it won't apply to all situations. Keep also in mind that this is a shortened version of a conversation that took several hours, and I could very well be here for 10 hours explaining little details about the market. By that I mean to say that I will cover what I think is the most important stuff in Cyclone's situation, and for the sake of simplifying, I have removed many smaller details that are also important but not as relevant. With that out of the way, I have divided this into 3 main categories, which are data acquisition, market state, and what does that mean for you? Data acquisition is quite self-explanatory. We want to know how much currency do you need to run a certain strategy. How much profit we are going to make out of it. How long does it take to run? This is quite obvious, and most guides on YouTube already cover it in detail. But since we are in the context of farming a lot of materials, in this case the essences, we need to start taking a look at the market too, and that is super important. If we plan on going very big on something, we're going to consider 3 different things about the market. The total volume of essences in the market, which we're going to call the stock. The volume moved on a given day. And, where is the money? It's important to know the total stock that the market is going to have, because that will determine the value, and our impact on the market. It's even more important to know how much of that stock is traded every day. That will have a higher impact on the value, and our accessibility in selling those essences. And lastly, and as importantly, where is the money? It's vital to know who is your customer, because it's not the same to sell materials to bigger traders than to sell materials to casual players. We will get into more detail on what that means in a second. The second category I wanted to talk about is the market state, which is where we're going to analyze and apply the data we just talked about. The first thing we talked about was the total stock. It's pretty obvious with basic concepts of offer and demand, that if you throw too much stock into the market, increasing the amount of offer, while the demand remains the same as it was before, the value of the offer will go down, according to how big your impact on the market is. Ideally, we want to generate enough materials to make as much profit as we can, without filling up the market entirely. The moment we are lowering the value of something, we should consider not going too much further. The second factor to keep in mind is the volume moved in a day, which will determine how much of those materials we will be able to sell realistically. If we are generating a lot more materials than what we can realistically sell in the same amount of time, that means that our stock will always go up in relation to how much more we are generating. This is very important because there are strategies that we don't mind selling it a week later, and might even be beneficial to sell it later on. But it could very well be the opposite, where we get stuck with a lot of stock that is ruining the market value, and delaying our profits that could be used elsewhere. Lastly, where exactly is the money? It might sound silly, but it's quite important to know who is going to buy your materials. If there are mostly casual players buying our materials, that means that we could very well squeeze an extra penny out of them, but the volume moved in a day will have a very hard cap, and it will be near impossible to raise said cap unless other factors happen. If traders, big crafters, or big groups are buying our materials, it means that we could likely lower the value to increase the volume we can realistically sell in a day, because these types of players are more likely to acquire more materials if given the chance. Depending on who is our customer, we can assess whether it's viable to exceed the current volume moved or not. Again, this is an oversimplified explanation of how a market works, but otherwise, we would be here for 10 hours. The last category is what does that mean for you, which I'm going to change to what would Batsy do. I think that will make more sense. Let's assume that we have tested a strategy to run next league, it's profitable, the runners can do it without problems and efficiently, the trader can provide enough stock. Awesome, everything is looking fantastic. If the trader hasn't researched the market state to have an accurate guess of how things are going to develop later on, it's very important to monitor closely how things are going. As traders, we want to keep track at all times of the total stock there is in the market. By the time we control 10 to 20% of the total stock, we should really consider our options, and how are we affecting things. Let's say we have 15% of the stock, and we just realized it. Then we should start monitoring how fast the runners are going, and how much excess materials are we getting. Meaning, how much are we exceeding the volume moved in a day? If after monitoring that, we come to the conclusion that we are greatly exceeding the volume moved, we need to determine whether that's a bad thing or not. And if we reach the conclusion that it's a bad thing, then we should immediately consider our options for dealing with it. Maybe running other strategies in between, maybe having a single runner doing those essences, and the other exiles doing other stuff. This will greatly depend on the situation, but it's super important as a trader to monitor those things. I want to really emphasize how important that is. If a runner is mildly faster than what the trader can deal with, that will simply mean a bit less profit, but still profit at the end of the day. If a runner is a lot faster than what the market can assimilate, then that's straight up a negative. It's not just less profit, it's straight up going to cost you. If I'm a trader for a group, and I spend 100 divines on buying memories, and 60% of those memories get wasted because we are generating too many essences, that's 60 divines of my budget that I could have used elsewhere, and made a profit with it. That also means that I'm wasting 60% of the runner's time on something that is literally going to give me zero profit in the short term. That time could have been used running something else for other profit. And as a trader, there is nothing worse than having dead stock, especially if we spent most or all of the budget on buying things for the runners. Now we suddenly have no currency to do stuff with, and are stuck with things that won't sell. Ideally, you want to gather info on a previous league, or in general be knowledgeable enough about the market to be able to have a reasonably accurate guess on the market state. Sometimes it's gonna be easy, for example, Mageblood will generally go up in price during the first week of the league. But sometimes it can also be very tricky. That's why I think it's important to monitor the market at all times, so you can react as soon as possible. There is a ton more stuff that I would add to this. I could be talking about the market for hours and hours, but I think these are the main topics that were relevant for Cyclone's situation, and I thought were important to share.
Alright, thank you so much, Batsy, for that in-depth explanation. I think it has been way better than I could have done. I really appreciate that. So, for everybody else, Batsy has offered to come back and explain trade in a more in-depth way, but to quote her own words, I will explain more if people isn't mean to me in the comments. So, that being said, now let's finally take a look at what I've actually made. I already said the number, it's 185 divines, but let's take a bit more detailed look, because this is just a big number, but for 4 days, what was actually run. So in those 4 days, I accumulated a playtime of 2 days and 10 hours. Now if we are very generous and say, alright, there's a lot of AFK time, prep time, setup time, maybe downtime, done other stuff time, I don't know what time. Let's say only 20 hours of those 2 days and 10 hours have been actually running the memories. And if we calculate that, we have our 185 divines, we divide it by those 20 hours, and we get 9.2 divines profit per hour. I would argue that in the end, that number isn't that much better than other strats. It is, but honestly, it is just, yeah. It is what it is. It happened, and I'm okay with it. I've already made my second build, I got my headhunter, I'm zooming through maps, I'm having a blast, and I will make an update video about that very soon. So let me know what you thought about this video, what you thought about Batsy, if you liked this approach, and if you would like to see more of it. All that being said, have a wonderful day, and I'll be seeing you in my next video. Goodbye.